Disclaimer. None of the songs, including intro, artworks, including thumbnail, or characters in the video are mine. This is not an accurate portrayal of the characters. This is not a defamation of character either. This is only for entertainment. Warning. Foul language, grammatical mistakes, typographical errors. After they delivered some cakes and the kids' things to Granny's place, the four of them braved through public transportation and a sea of odd, questioning looks with awkward smiles thrown at them. People were of course curious as to where four big guys with at least 20 cakes were going, and how they are able to carry all of them, but no one asked, too intimidated to do so. Finally, they arrived at the venue where different high school basketball teams near Osaka all converged to train. Both the Yosen and Sirin team met them at the entrance, also sporting questioning looks, except for Atsushi, whose eyes turned to stars at the sight of all the cakes. They didn't notice though, the stack of cakes blocking their sight. How did you guys even see where you're going? With the power of friendship. Everyone snorted at that. Now that we've established that, can someone help us? Everyone oofed at that, then proceeded to help the others carry the cakes, leaving Atsushi confused as to who he should help, mostly because he wanted to get his hands on every box. He chose Toru because he's the one he likes the most. Taiga also sent his brother a look asking for help, but Tatsuya just ignored him. As they made their way towards the area where Seirin and Yosen, which are fortunately the same, are staying, a rough voice spoke. Whoa, that is a lot of cake. All of them looked to where the voice came from and Toru's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. He's familiar. Where have I seen him before? Is there a party or something? Terasica was still talking, but Toru isn't hearing a word of it, still busy studying him, trying to remember where he's seen him before. Then he read what was written in the jersey of the man in front of him. Inarizaki. Oh. Just as Toru remembered, an enthusiastic voice shouted beside him. Hey hey hey, I know you. You're the one who has a crush on some. Kotaro shouted loud enough for everyone in the building to hear, going as far as to point at Terasica. Toru choked as he held back a laugh and utterly failing to do so. The others didn't even try. Terasica just spluttered at the accusation, confusion and embarrassment evident on his face. Who the fuck is some? He growled, trying to appear tough in front of the crowd watching him and laughing at him. Mia Atsumu. Toru answered in a shit-eating grin. He's not about to pass up an opportunity to mess with someone, especially a homophobic bully who's only really a homophobic bully because he's still in the closet. What? No, I don't have a crush on Mia. He shouted loud enough to rival Kotaro, and if not for his voice breaking, him stuttering, and his red face, everyone would have believed him. No, that's a lie. He's a horrible liar, and even if he wasn't, his teammates' reactions would have betrayed him and revealed the truth. That's good then. Kotaro nodded, his face so serious that if Toru didn't know him and the chaos he's capable of, he would have bought into his act. Because you don't stand a chance anyway. Toru laughed, and so did others, but his was the loudest. At least he's not wheezing like a deflating balloon like Riyota. Sometimes, Toru thinks that Kotaro could be very cruel, even if unknowingly, and sometimes, he entertains the thought that Kotaro is doing it deliberately but is using his himbo image as a shield. Kotaro's one of the most empathic people he knows, so it's kind of sus that he doesn't realize that he hurt someone. Besides, there's a reason he fits right in with Toru, Atsumu, Tendo, and Kiryu after all. Well, what? Why don't I stand a chance? Toru bit his cheek to stop, or at least lessen the terribly amused smile on his face as he tilted his head to the side, trying to project an image of confusion and innocence. No one but Terasica bought his act though, and that's mostly because Terasica's avoiding their eyes. I thought you don't have a crush on Atsumu? Tori's smile widened as he and Kotaro's eyes met, the latter mirroring Toru's grin. So then, why are you so curious? Terasica blushed even more, so much that most of them took a step back lest he explode. He tried to give out excuses or anything, but none of the sounds that came out his mouth were coherent enough to qualify as words. Finally, Terasica puffed his cheeks and crossed his arms as he glared at Toru. Why do you care anyway? Toru shrugged, his grin never leaving his face. I mean, I am Tsumu's best friend and I do live with him. I'm just concerned. The glare fell out of Terasica's face as he looked at Toru with 100 different expressions, as if confused by how to react. Toru thought he heard muffled snickering behind him, but he ignored it in favor of paying attention to Kotaro when he spoke. Yes. Toru's grin widened once more when he saw the serious look on Kotaro's face that was betrayed by the incredibly amused glint in his eyes. Kotaro's smarter than a lot of people give him credit for, and definitely a better actor than me. Some listens a lot to Core, so gaining Core's favor means gaining Sum's favor. Toru looked away before he started laughing at the almost reverent and hopeful look on Terasica's face. He'd feel bad if not for the things the other did to Atsumu. And it doesn't matter if he's doing it to hide a crush. It still isn't right. So Toru feigned a sympathetic smile towards Terasica. That's right. Then his lips curled into a grimace. But like Bakun said, you don't stand a chance. Why not? Terasica pouted. He actually pouted. And Toru doesn't know if he should laugh or something. Atsumu already likes someone. He's still in love with Kyumi after all. And maybe the others thought that he was talking about Shintaro, but Atsumu doesn't like Shintaro. At least not romantically. There's potential for his feelings to bloom, but as of right now, Atsumu's still in love with Kyumi. But like he said, it has potential for Atsumu's feelings to bloom. And a lot of potential at that. So Shintaro has Toru's support. Who? You might know him. He plays basketball too. Terasica squares his shoulders as if gearing for a fight, and Toru, and others, muffled their laughter. Is he any good? Why? Are you going to challenge him? Terasica didn't answer that, but judging by how his features hardened, they took it as a resounding yes. I think he's good. I don't really know since I play volleyball, but from what I've heard, he's pretty good. Toru heard multiple snorts from the people around him and he smiled at that, which widened into a grin as Kurarao spoke. Yeah, I heard Midorima-kun's really good at basketball. Kotaro said with a voice dripping in saccharine sweetness and innocence, which Toru didn't believe in one bit. He watched as Terasica and his team flinched at the name, and Terasica himself almost melting into a puddle of goo as his hardened features softened, and not in a good way. Midorima. One of Terasica's teammates choked. As in Midorima never miss a shot, always 3 points generation of miracles Shintaro. That Midorima. Toru blinked slightly at that. He knew that the gay bacon gang are good at basketball, according to the little bits he heard of anyway. But to have the type of reputation that he never misses a shot, Toru wonders if they are exaggerating. It's not that he doesn't have faith on his friends, but Toru knows enough about basketball at least that even NBA players miss shots. Toru blinked once more and removed that thought from his mind to focus on more pressing matters, which is to mess with a bully. So you have heard of him? Heard of him. Who hasn't? So Midorima-kun is really good then? Good. Haha, right. Terasica wheezed out, like a deflating balloon. Do you wanna see pictures? Toru ignored him and waved his phone around with a huge smile. The entire Inarizaki team tripped over themselves to look, all except for Terasica, who's still rooted to the spot. Toru walked over to him and the Inarizaki team followed once more. There he showed them a picture of Atsumu and Midorima cuddling on the couch. It was a photo that Taka took and sent Toru. No way. One of the Inarizaki team breathed out, or amusement, and a tiny bit of fear coloring the tone of his voice. Dude, you really don't stand a chance. He spoke again, directed to Terasica this time, and Toru had to bite his lip to stop himself from laughing, especially when Terasica tried to weakly deny that he doesn't like Atsumu. Here, Toru handed Terasica 2 boxes of cake. If it's any consolation. He then patted the still catatonic Terasica twice on his arm and walked away, Saccharine and Yozen following. As soon as they turned the corner, Toru made eye contact with Kotaro and both of them doubled over in laughter. Did you see his face? Ha 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 ha, yeah. That was so mean, but it was so funny. At the reminder that their joke was a bit cruel, Toru paled as he twisted to see Saccharine and Yozen's reaction. Specifically, Tiger's reaction. The redhead was silent the entire time and Toru felt his heart drop down into his stomach and then up into his throat, which he forcefully swallowed down. He saw. He heard. Oh my god. He saw how shitty I can be. Is he going to leave now? I thought I'd have more time. But when his and Tiger's eyes met, all he saw in them was fondness. Toru swallowed tightly as he stopped himself from crying and screaming, from having a mental breakdown in public. But all his thoughts screeched to a halt when a warm hand held his. Toru looked at the hand holding his in confusion, and followed it with his eyes when it raised his up in front of Taiga's face and pressed a small kiss on it. He looked at the taller redhead in the eye once more and saw how it softened when Taiga smiled. It was really funny, especially his face. And hey, at least he has cake. Taiga chuckled softly and Toru took a few more moments to calm down, his grip on Taiga's hand tightening as he tried to swallow down the panic he felt at the thought of Taiga leaving. Taiga also tightened his grip on Toru's hand and Toru finally managed to let out another laugh. A weak and shaky one, but a laugh nonetheless. And if Toru focused on the warmth pressed on his pulse so he could relax, well, only one person can feel it. Taiga saw it before, the mischief and chaos that Toru's capable of, but he only saw it on Hokkaido. Because after Tokyo, after everything that happened, Taiga never saw it again. Toru rarely even smiled, much less with so much amusement and mischief. Until now, as Taiga watched Toru and Kotaro destroy the Inarizuki member, Taiga doesn't know his name, doesn't even remember if his name was mentioned. Taiga saw once more the face that made him fall in love. He didn't think it was possible for Toru to be even more beautiful, but when he saw that devilish smirk in his face, the one that showed how terribly amused he is, Taiga was reminded of the Toru he fell in love with. He loves and appreciates each of Toru's small and soft smiles and laughter, but compared to his mischievous ones, they just seem lacking. The expressions of joy that usually show nowadays are like moonlight, absolutely beautiful and a sight that Taiga would never tire of staring at, but it's borrowed, like a muted reflection. It's still real and still beautiful but it's not really Toru anymore. His mischievous side on the other hand is like sunlight, so bright and so warm, so full of life, but unappreciated. The light would be too blinding to some, and others would curse at it for its heat, but once it sets, once it disappears, it leaves cold and darkness, leaves people grasping at air as they try to see, to wade through the dark. It leaves people shivering and wishing for a little bit of light because they know that the moon and all the other stars in the sky would never be enough. That's how Taiga felt when he saw Toru's mischievous expression. When before, it always seemed like a spotlight shined upon him. Now it felt like the light was coming from him. It was brilliant and it left him breathless. And Taiga fell all over again. Taiga approached his coach as if approaching a cornered bear. He's going to ask permission to go to Kyoto and he doesn't think he'll live long enough for that. But still, he's hoping for a miracle. Before he could open his mouth though, let me guess, you want to go to Kyoto? Yes. Riko nodded slowly and Taiga's kind of scared how calm his coach is, so much that he almost missed what she said. I'm sorry, what? I said sure. Taiga stared at Riko unblinking for a few moments trying to figure out if he's hallucinating because there is no way it's that easy. Okay. Taiga inched slowly away from his coach but his eyes remained trained on her, afraid that she'd attack him the second he turns his back. Oh, remember to bring a change of clothes. Taiga wondered if this is that passive-aggressive thing girls do when they pretend to give you permission but actually means they'll murder you in your sleep if you even dare. Taiga has never been so thankful that he's gay. Why? What do you mean why? I've already talked to Kisekun and Shutoku's coach to allow both of you to play against Shutoku tomorrow. Wait, what? Kisekun is staying at a hotel courtesy of his modeling company but we can't afford that, so I asked Shutoku if they have space for you. And since it's only for one night, they agreed. Riko paused before looking at Taiga with a mischievous smile. Or maybe you can ask Oikawa-san to let you sleep with him. Literally. I mean, since you're still underage. Taiga's face turned a shade as red as his hair. I'm not thinking of that. You're a teenage boy. And although you look like you're old enough to be a fully grown adult, you're actually not. You're still going through puberty and it's totally normal to have those kinds of thoughts. Especially since you have a crush on. Stop. Oh my god, I'm not here for that kind of education. He looked away to try and hide his embarrassment at their topic but his red ears gave him away. Riko giggled to herself as she watched her team's ace blush quietly and decided to stop her teasing. But not before delivering a last jab. You're surprisingly innocent. Whatever. How cute. Riko thought to herself with another giggle. By the time they get to Kyoto, the sun has already set. Before they get to the address that Atsumu sent, Toru told Kotaro to contact Atsumu to meet them at the gate since they weren't sure they could just waltz in. He would have done it himself, except he knew that if he did, Atsumu would have screamed at him through the phone. His best friend would have scolded him in person anyway. Might as well make it one long lecture rather than have two long lectures. And lo and behold, they were greeted by an irate blonde. Toru could see the underlying worry though, and he can't help but smile, which just made Atsumu glower even more. Toru tried to hide his smile. He really did, but Atsumu is just so adorable. Indignant, Atsumu started to march towards Toru. The redhead hoped that Shintaro and Taka, who is beside Atsumu, would stop him, but alas. Ikoa Toru. Oh shit. Atsumu opened his mouth to presumably start his long tirade, but Toru beat him to it. I'm sorry for worrying you, Atsumu. I promise never to do it again. Atsumu continued to glare at Toru, searching his face for a trace of a lie. When he didn't find anything, he backed off with a huff. You better not. Smiling because he dodged a bullet, Toru handed Atsumu the cake he was holding. Peace offering, and with that, the blonde's mood brightened. Don't you have training, Bokken? Kotaro is playing as a pro now, and although he's not a regular yet, it's still weird that he's taking a break. Atsumu worried that it's his fault since he's the one who called him. Kotaro just shrugged. We're required to have one free day per week. I used mine for tomorrow. What about today? Didn't you cut your training time short to come here? Toru bit his lip in guilt. Kotaro eyed two of his best friends. For being known as people who only care about themselves, Atsumu and Toru sure do worry a lot about others. Although he's happy that the two trusts him enough to genuinely show their worry, he can't help but be mad that others can't see this side of them. If only they looked deeper, he thought to himself. It's fine. I was excused since I said it was an emergency. No, it was. Yes, it was. The three who spoke looked at each other for a moment before turning back to a shook Toru. You're my friend Koa. Of course I'd take time off, even volleyball, to make sure you're okay. You're important enough to be an emergency. You know, without context, that sounds a lot like an insult. Everyone let out a laugh at that, but nobody denied it because it did sound like an insult out of context. Toru might have deflected the serious talk into a joke, but Kotaro saw the gratitude in his eyes, so he took that as a win. Oh, by the way, Bokken, do you have somewhere to stay at? He's staying with me, the other blonde answered with a beaming smile. Kotaro nodding enthusiastically beside him. And Kagamin's staying with Koa. Tiger choked on his spit at the sudden declaration. He was about to deny it, but he couldn't help but check Toru's reaction first. He saw Toru slowly nod his head in agreement. And with such a response, it's not like Tiger can argue. Not that he wants to. Between staying deep in enemy not enemy territory and Toru, Tiger would choose to stay with Toru any day. To be fair, he would choose Toru over anything else. Which isn't really fair at all. After all, no competition is fair when the winner's already chosen before it even begins. We're here. The Inarizaki team stopped training when they hear their captain's loud and enthusiastic voice. The others lingered by the door while Atsumu went to talk to his coaches. They, the Inarizaki team and Toru's group, were all staring each other down. Toru, Shintaro, and Kotaro scrutinized the people in front of them. These are Atsumu's teammates, his supposed friends, and yet they are the ones who hurt Atsumu the most. Osamu, Suna and Jinjima also studied the people in front of them. These people were Atsumu's friends, and yet they don't know who they are. They couldn't help but flinch under their glares. If this was under normal circumstances, if this was under what was supposed to be, they should be the ones doing the scrutinizing, because they are Atsumu's first and longest friends. But they forfeited that position when they started acting like shit people towards Atsumu. The silent battle ended with one voice. Atsumachi didn't tell us he has a twin. Riyota shouted with amazement as he studied Osamu, missing how the gray-haired male violently flinched. The silence that followed after that statement was deafening, but the one who caused it remained oblivious to the effect of his words as he rambled on and on about the differences between the twins. Then he changed gears and somehow made things even worse. Where's Kitachi, Iranchi, Akagichi, Amimichi? I don't see them anywhere. Are they not here? Man, I really loved hanging out with them. They are so fun. Kitachi and Iranchi was very dependable when they helped clean up Atsumachi and Oikoichi's house. And, as the only person who has both emotional intelligence and social etiquette, Taka took matters into his hands as he laughed loudly. Well, it's nice to meet you and all, but Atsumu-san, we have to go. We need to deliver the cakes and our training is not yet finished. You see, and coach wanted to see you, Kagami-chan and Kise-chan. Taka started pulling the whining Riyota out of the building, but Atsumu stopped him. I thought we were all eating together. From his peripheral view, Taka observed how Atsumu's teammates looked away and fidgeted. The petty part of Taka smiled at that. Unfortunately, he can't just do what he wants to do, which is drag Atsumu away from there so he could join them for dinner. Taka also saw Riyota about to respond, and he could only close his eyes in anticipation at the awkwardness that will no doubt double after whatever words come out of those mouth. Fortunately, Inarizuki's coach spoke before Riyota could. Unfortunately, Taka doesn't know if it was better to let Riyota run his mouth after all. How about we all have dinner together? I can talk to your coach and we'll see what they think of a joint dinner. Yeah, there's no way this dinner isn't a disaster waiting to happen. Taka would like to rephrase his words. He hopes this dinner is a disaster waiting to happen. Anything is better than the awkward silence that surrounded their table. The tension is so thick he might as well cut it instead of the cakes. Seriously, this level of silence is something that a group of almost 20 teenage boys shouldn't be capable of. This is worse than when they had a team meal after they lost a match. All of them are eating like graceful princesses, as if anything less than perfect would get them executed. They are all eating so slowly that they complete the digestive cycle before they take another bite. He's very tempted to start drama, preferably punching someone, and preferably someone from the Inarizuki team just to break the awkward bubble that surrounded them. The only thing stopping him is his captain's wrath, and even that is starting to sound better than the deafening silence. And in his very unbiased opinion, this entire thing is the Inarizuki team's fault, including their coach but excluding Atsumu of course. So really, it's not like anyone can blame him when he has perfectly punchable targets in front of him. If questioned, he'd say it's due to divine intervention and that he got possessed or something. Shintaro's bound to believe him, which is great because he has the money to bail him out if need be, which is getting more likely every passing second. He must have done something good in his past life because his wish came true. Something did happen, and he didn't even have to punch someone. Although he did get a headache. Nothing unusual. It started with a yelp from an eager Atsumu who burned his tongue, which is now hanging out of his mouth as he fanned it with his hands. The sound that Atsumu let out immediately cut through the tension and took all their attention. So naturally, everyone witnessed when Shintaro immediately dropped his chopsticks to gently hold the blonde's chin and tip his head up to wipe the tears peeking out of the corner of his eyes. Taka felt his eye twitch at the audacity of it all. Really? In front of my salad? He can't even look away because it's useless. Freaking Hawkeye. So he decided to just stare at the two being all love-a-dove in front of him, hoping that they would notice and stop. Unfortunately, those two don't really notice anything around them when they're together. It's cute and Taka is their biggest shipper, but still, the pining makes him want to bash his head into a wall, or bash their heads together. That's probably why Shintaro's hair is green. Pine tree looking motherfudger. Any more and he'd be an entire freaking forest. Hoth. Shintaro let out a slight laugh as he picked up a glass of water, which is his own. Taka noticed. Taka moved his gaze to Atsumu's forgotten glass of water and sent it an apologetic look. My hong is numb. Atsumu complained with his tongue still out, which made Shintaro snort before pulling Atsumu's face closer by his chin so he can blow on his tongue. Taka's mouth hung open at the scene and he sent the entire table an incredulous expression. Are you guys seeing this sheet? Taka tried to telepathically send his concerns to the others. Turns out he didn't have to since everyone else was sporting the same scandalized looks. All except for one person. And that person is the one person who had Shintaro beat in Pining Tiger was too busy being picky with his food to even notice the scene happening literally beside him. Taka noticed that the only things he was eating were the food that had bitter taste. Taka sent him a judgmental look. Toru on the other hand was busy looking more and more confused the further he watched his best friend unknowingly flirt. What the hell? He mouthed silently before moving his gaze to Taka and gesturing towards the two lovebirds. How can someone be so dense? Taka gave Toru a blank look as he moved his gaze from him to Tiger who was cutting the meat in Toru's plate, which, Taka noticed, is the same plate he was picking at earlier. Are they sharing a plate? He watched as Tiger picked one of the smaller pieces of meat with his chopsticks and fed it to Toru. The entire thing was so utterly domestic that it made Taka want to gag, or drown himself in his soup. And still, Toru had the audacity to complain about how dense Atsumu and Shintaro are when he's even worse. Toru's nose scrunched adorably when Tiger placed a vegetable in front of him. Tootsie Roll, you need to eat your vegetables. Tootsie Roll. Wakanda cringy ass call sign is that, but KitKat. Taka's eye twitched as he buried down the urge to drag the two redheads to a nearby Denny's parking lot and sword fight them there. The only thing that made Taka feel better is the fact that he isn't the only one suffering. While he prefers to not also suffer, knowing that he's not alone is more than enough to appease him. Schadenfreude and all that. Toru is fidgeting under the intensity of Atsumu's gaze. Has been since the blonde pulled him aside after the impromptu dinner. He knows what this is gonna be about and that's making him even more anxious. Honestly, he really thought Atsumu forgot all about that. You really thought I forgot about it, huh? And Toru answered, no, you know, like a liar. Unfortunately for him, Atsumu's seen Toru do his best in the bullshitting category and this attempt wasn't even in his top 100. Not that it could be called an attempt at all. Atsumu narrowed his eyes at him and Toru has never felt more like a kid getting scolded. Not even when his parents did it. To be fair, his parents didn't really scold him. At least not like Atsumu did. His father went to get milk when he was young and well, he's still looking for it. And even before that, he was content to ignore Toru. His mother was similar. But when she did scold him, it was less because Toru actually did something bad and more to remind him that she hates him. Atsumu's doing it with worry and concern for his well-being in mind, which, while touching, is somehow 100 times worse. Maybe Atsumu read his mind and all the bad memories that filled it because he stepped closer and fully engulfed Toru in a warm embrace. The redhead relaxed immediately as he buried his face on the crook of Atsumu's neck, returning the hug as tight as possible, and he was crying in no time. Toru hates it. Hates crying so much. It feels like that's the only thing he does these days. Angry, cry. Sad, cry. Bored, remember every bad thing that ever happened to him then fucking cry. It's pathetic and shows him how weak he truly is. He can't even cry out of happiness because he doesn't remember how it feels to be truly happy anymore. Yes, there are those small things that make him smile and laugh. But most if not all only give shallow happiness and nothing really fills the void in his chest. Aside from not wanting to leave Atsumu alone in this wretched world, nothing really makes him want to stay, to live. Tiger makes him smile, makes him laugh, makes him feel safe and warm, but he doesn't really make Toru feel like it's worth living. It makes Toru guilty, because even though he wants to thank Tiger for everything he's done, it's always followed by wanting to apologize, because Toru is a greedy person, and because of that, it's not enough. It's never enough. He'd like to pay him back someday, and he just hopes he's strong enough to live that long. But Atsumu's different. He can't leave Atsumu because he has a feeling Atsumu would follow. It wasn't like they were friends at the beginning, or that they became friends immediately. With their personalities, they inevitably clashed at first. They were both amazing setters, and just overall amazing volleyball players. One held the title, and the other competent enough to steal it, if only given the chance. And of course they've heard of each other. How could they not? Toru would have researched the supposed best, and Atsumu would also have scouted his potential rivals, especially one that not only did Wakatoshi want, but also someone who showed up in the same volleyball magazines as him, without even reaching nationals. They both could be the best, except only one can hold the title, and that made them enemies. But they're not each other's greatest enemy. No, that title is reserved for another, a younger yet more talented setter who could put all their hard work to shame. And maybe because of that, they gained some sort of understanding, some sort of kinship. But their insecurities regarding Tobio wasn't really what pushed them to take the first step. No, that would be their similar situation of loving someone who didn't love them enough. Flashback. It was a normal day. So normal, so ordinary that it bored Toru to death. Desperate for anything exciting, he messaged the most chaotic group chat he's a part of, which is the group chat with the most people. In the volleyball's group chat. Yahoo! It was honestly just a coincidence that they both messaged the group chat at the same time. and after some passive-aggressive comments about their GC names, as well as some people egging them on, and some annoyed by their messages, they finally got to the point and asked for someone to hang out with. That day, nobody but them were available. Some politely rejected and some added insults to their rejection. Similar to that time they messaged the same group chat for company to Hokkaido, except it wasn't as bad. Long story short, only they were available and willing to hang out. Not even their not yet boyfriends were available. Both of them knew the loneliness when you're alone, and they hated it above everything else. So with no other choice, they both decided to give each other a chance and met up. Honestly, they both thought that the entire affair would end with either one or both of them at the hospital or in jail. And at the beginning it did seem that that was how their day would end, with both of them being blunt and having a penchant for mischief and pissing people off. They practically spent the day insulting each other, but they somehow understood each other, that's just how they spoke, and while they did mean some of the things they said, it's not for the sake of hurting each other and being a jerk. At the end of that day, they did end up in a battle, but not with their tongues or their fists. They happened to walk by a volleyball court, and since neither wanted to give up the position of setter, they played on opposite teams and let their abilities do the talking. Neither won because Atsumu noticed that Toru had a problem with his knee, so he made them exit the match before they could finish the game. They ended up in a hole in the wall that isn't exactly a bar, a restaurant, or an arcade, and more of a combination of all three. It became a normal occurrence. They'd ask friends to hang out, then they would get rejected, until just stopped asking their friends and just went straight to each other. They said no again. Nah, I didn't ask. No need to when I already know the answer. I did ask Omi though because I wanted to go on a date, but you know how it is. Toru nodded silently because he did know. There would be rare cases wherein someone else do join them. Mostly it was Kotaro, Tetsuru, and Satori, and even more rare, Akashi, Sugar, and Wakatoshi. But it was an unspoken rule between the two of them that the place they found on that day remains between them. So they don't take anyone else there. Not even when they finally became official with their boyfriends. That's how the babe thing started. Hey. A man cut off their conversation with as he looked down on both of them, his eyes scanning the expanse of their bodies with a disgusting glint in his eyes. What do you want? Atsumu replied, annoyance coating his words. The question is, what do you want? The man said with a wink, and Toru suppressed a gag. For you to leave. Toru went back to his drink, a milkshake, to hide his smile. He just let Atsumu handle it because he knows the blonde is more than capable. Is that really what you want? You might regret it. Not as much as I regret talking to you. I could give you the best night of your life. The best night of my life, as you say, is the night without you in it. But the man remained persistent, so Atsumu used his last card. I have a boyfriend. And that's that. Most people leave when they find out you're not single. Toru always found it odd how people only take the hint when you say you're in a relationship. Like seriously, if you can't even respect a simple no, I'm not interested, how do you expect to endear them to you? Unfortunately, Perry the pervert didn't get the memo because he still hasn't left. Oh yeah? Where is he then? I've watched both of you for a long time and it's always only you both. What? Do you just not hang out with your boyfriend then? Atsumu flushed because that's exactly how it was, but hearing it from the mouth of a stranger really hurt and made him feel pathetic and humiliated. He can't even show pictures because Kyumi doesn't like his picture being taken. And the ones he had of him were stolen pictures and they weren't there together. Or, are you cheating with pretty boy? Toru intervened because not only does he know Atsumu's situation, he also knows the blonde is just a second away from punching the man's face, and he can't let him do that because they both actually like this place and he's not about to let a pervert get them banned. Are you stupid? What makes you think I'm not his boyfriend? Like I said, I've been watching you two for a while now. I know platonic when I see one. Toru suppressed a shiver, both from fear and disgust at that statement, but nothing could stop his entire body from stiffening due to the man's next words. But if I was mistaken, well, I don't have problems taking care of two sweet little things like you. The look the man gave them made Toru want to run and hide. Why don't you two darlings prove to me that you're really together and give me a show? Disgusting. Utterly disgusting. Everything about the man in front of them made Toru's skin crawl. Thankfully, before they could respond, they were saved by Hewan, part-time bartender and full-time BAMF. Oh, stop bothering them. The glare she sent Perry the pervert made Toru want to go down on his knees and give the absolute girl boss his undying fidelity. Or else what, girlie? If you wanted my attention instia. The man was unconscious before he hit the floor. You two okay? Hewan turned to them as if she didn't just unalive a man twice her size with just one punch. Fucking queen. They both could only nod mutely at her. She gestured for one of the guards, a man named Lee Hyun-sung, the biggest man with the biggest heart they know, to take care of the unconscious body of Perry. After that, whenever someone hits on them that couldn't understand the word no, they decided to pretend to be in a relationship with each other because neither have enough substantial proof of their so-called boyfriends. Although rare are the times when they had to pretend to be together, they eventually got used to calling each other babe until they just called each other that unconsciously and people just assumed their relationship. Babe isn't just a word of endearment and a symbol of their friendship. It was also a word that protected them, and a word that reminds them they had to protect themselves and each other.